Hello lovely people, welcome to another book chat, the regular roundup of stuff I've read at some point in my past.
Sophie Vlogs.
We've got 4 books to talk about this week, 1 fiction and 3 non-fiction, so I will start off with my fiction. That was a reread. This is Prince Caspian, which is the second book in the Narnia Chronicles of Narnia. Narnia Chronicles? Who am I? As I mentioned in last week's book chat, I'm rereading this series with my friend. This is definitely one of the ones from the series that I did not remember very well. So it was interesting to sort of remind myself. I think I remembered like the key plot beats, but not a lot of detail. So the Pevensey children return to Narnia. In their world, it's not been that long, but in Narnia, thousands of years have passed. And there's this clash happening. Prince Caspian is, so say, like the true king of Narnia. His uncle has tried to usurp the throne. He's leading a rebellion against him with the remnants of the animals with uppercase A and the magical creatures that are left, but so many of these creatures are no longer there because the humans, or telemarines I think is what they're called, have sort of driven them away. I enjoyed the start of this book. I think it started really well, and I enjoyed sort of the children coming back to Narnia, and then as they were in Narnia, it's like Narnia affects them, and the longer that this goes on, the more they get closer to who they were when they were kings and queens, you know, like it takes time for their powers and skills and stuff to sort of like kick back into gear. And that was like an interesting concept and process to see happen as it goes on. I think one thing I feel about this is just the pacing. It's notably a bit longer than The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and I felt like a lot less happened. I think that we built up pace at the start, and then there's a whole portion of the narrative which is just like someone telling them about Prince Caspian's past, and then there's a whole portion of the narrative where they're like attempting to get to Prince Caspian, and I did find myself being a little impatient at times. I also think that this is something that is going to come up, I think, more as I read the series, but I think I have a fundamental issue with some of the Narnia concept, namely that, like, because humans are son of Adam and daughter of Eve, that they are, like, innately better, and that there is a true king, you know? So, like, this concept that, like, Caspian is the true king, and he is destined to rule over the animals and the magical creatures that are from Narnia, despite the fact that humans are not originally from Narnia, you know? And that really culminated for me at the end of this, because, and mild spoilers, please skip ahead like a minute if you don't want to know anything, but there is, towards the conclusion of this, obviously the Telmarines, who are bad guys, who are too bad to stay in Narnia. Aslan, like, gives them a way out, where they go through this door to, like, this island, but the island is like an island in our world that has native people living there, and Aslan is just like, it's okay if you're too terrible to stay in Narnia, you can just go and be kings on this island? And I'm like, people live there, and these people are terrible, you know? So there's very much like, you know, I don't believe in the concept of people like divine right of kings and stuff like this. I do not think that there are people who are like destined to rule over everyone else. So I think that that is a stumbling block with the concept of the series that I'm just gonna have to like carry on with. You know, I'll definitely keep reading it. It's just, I think as that becomes a thing that is expounded, I'm always going to be a bit like, oh, baby, no. And then I will also say that I definitely, whereas in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, there was just like 1 or 2 moments when it's like, Susan fainted when she should have been trying to be helpful, that sort of thing. I got that a bit more in this, and I think it is very much definitely in how Susan is written about versus how Lucy is written about, because Lucy is, you know, the one of the siblings who has unwavering faith in Aslan and that sort of thing, whereas Susan is very much like, she's a bit of a nag. She doesn't really believe, or does she? And I think that's another aspect that will also get under my skin a bit. I don't know. So it was interesting. It's definitely not my favourite of the series. On to my non-fiction. This is just a dinky little book, A Little Gay History, Desire and Diversity Across the World by R.B. Parkinson. This was essentially put together to accompany an exhibition that was at the British Museum. So this is kind of what I expected it to be, whereby it is sort of little snapshots. It's not a super in-depth book, but that's what I was anticipating. It's using items exclusively from the British Museum's collection, and it is just sort of like starting way back in 9000 BC with the earliest depiction of a couple having sex, and then coming up to contemporary times. It is interesting. I appreciate that there is sort of a wider global focus. That's been really interesting to sort of get these glimpses and understandings of different cultures and how they view same-sex desire at like different points in history. I will say the only reason the British Museum has these items to be included in this exhibit is potentially because they were acquired through dodgy means, so I think that that is something that is worth like acknowledging, and to be fair, it is acknowledged slightly in this. Also, most of this is to do with same-sex relationships between men. That's the type of artwork and depictions that have survived as sort of like a nature of the world in which we live. So that's not necessarily an issue because it's another thing that is acknowledged at the start of the book. He is like, it's not ideal, but it's what we have the most of, and so that's what the majority of this is. But it has been a really interesting sort of like snapshot intro. It's giving me things that I can then go off and look into further if I want to like explore particular like time periods and that sort of stuff more. So definitely one that I would recommend if this is an interest area of yours like it is for me. After that is Looking for Transwonderland, Travels in Nigeria by Noo Saru-Wiwa. This came onto my radar because I read a book called Dictatorland by Paul Kenyon, which was looking at different African countries who have had dictatorships and the way that those dictatorships were sort of like linked to exploitation of some of their resources and that sort of thing. And in that book was mentioned Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was Noo's father, who was an environmental activist in Nigeria, who was assassinated. And so when I saw this book secondhand on Oxfam, I was intrigued, so I thought I would give it a read. She's Nigerian, but she was largely brought up in the UK as a child, and then I think I'm correct in saying that she hadn't been back to Nigeria since her father was murdered. Her career was writing travel books, so she has travelled very widely, and then at the start of this book it's her going to Nigeria again for the first time in a very long time, and she's travelling all around Nigeria, and so the chapters are split by location of where she is, and each chapter sort of explores a different topic to do with that location. Some chapters take place in the same location for like a number of chapters. Occasionally we just have the one chapter on a place, that sort of thing. I really appreciated just getting a better understanding of the geography of Nigeria because, number one, I am horrendously bad at geography and maps, and it's really not my strong point, and if I get lost anywhere, I'm screwed because I'm not very good at map reading. So it was very interesting just to get an understanding of the differences between like the north and south of Nigeria. When Europeans came over and colonized, like borders were drawn that sort of lumped a whole bunch of people together who were very different people from very different tribes with very different beliefs and lifestyles and that sort of thing, and then they were just told like, you're a country now. So it's just very interesting getting a better understanding of all these different peoples who make up Nigeria and then the geography of Nigeria. This was written a couple of years ago, so it was before Boko Haram and that sort of stuff, so in many ways it was also an interesting snapshot of that time before some of these tensions that she observes sort of became much bigger and explosive and that sort of thing. I will say I sometimes found it a little harder to connect to her. I think she does a really good job on the travel writing aspect, understand the distinct feelings of all these different places. I just felt a bit disconnected from her. She does give you some personal anecdotes. I don't know, I just felt like a distance from her as I was reading it. That might just be a me thing. I saw loads of other reviews where people thought her writing was amazing and they really connected to it. So, I'm aware that maybe I'm just not the audience, but I found the writing quite matter-of-fact, and I just felt a bit of a distance from her as a person. So definitely a book that I am glad I've read, and I haven't read a lot of travel writing, so there's also that aspect where it's not a genre that I've really explored. If you have any recommendations for travel writing that you love, I would be interested in hearing them, because it's not a genre that I really have explored that fully, and I did enjoy getting this sense of a place that I've never been. So yeah, I enjoyed. It just a couple of mixed feelings. Finally, I'm going to end on one that might be a bit of a cheat, because it's a cookbook, but I read it like a book. This is Cook, Eat, Repeat by Nigella Lawson. I decided to include it because, although this is a recipe book, there are what I would call essays running throughout this, and there are quite a few of them. So I thought I would just tack it on the end. I love reading Nigella Lawson's cookbooks like they are books, because she does have this tendency, not just like at the start of different chapters, but just like throughout, like before the recipe itself, she just gives you a big chatty thing. And I really like that. I love the way Nigella talks about food. It's so sumptuous, it's so decadent, just the way she approaches food, just it's delightful to read about. When it comes to the actual recipes, there are not a huge number of these that I will be making myself, and that is partly because she does a lot of recipes where the meat is very vital and it is very much like the hero of the dish, and I'm vegetarian, and those are not easy things to sub out. I will say she does do a really good job in this of suggesting subs you can do depending on your dietary requirements before each thing. So, you know, if you need to make it gluten-free, if you need to make it vegan, stuff like that, she does explore that. It's just, you know, if you're doing like braised baby back ribs or something, like how do you replace that, you know? Also, I found like some of the recipes were reminded me a lot of other recipes from other cookbooks of hers that I have read. So I'm not sure if it is where I would recommend starting with Nigella, but if you already love Nigella, then it's a lovely book and a lovely read. Like, and I will definitely make enough of them for it to be worth it, and I will probably reread parts of this enough as well. But I just wanted to mention it because I read it like a book, and I had a lovely time doing so. But yeah, that's everything I want to talk about this week. I hope you're having a really lovely day. I would love to hear from you. If you want to leave a comment about any of these books or any books that you are reading, do let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time for something different.